So today my guest is Namrata Rohack. We met on Instagram when she actually shared her story of grief and loss on a post that I wrote. And then I contacted her through DMs and we had a really lovely conversation that evening where I found out she was a yoga therapist in training, which is so interesting. And she's such an interesting person and done so much that I wanted to share her with you. So here she is. Hi, Namrata.
Hi, thank you for
Welcome.
having me, Kat.
You are welcome. Thank you so much for being on. Oh, now, where do we start?
No, it's a lot. I'll just say a little bit about myself. So
Yeah.
currently, I'm in Jacksonville, Florida. I've been here for like 8 years. I live here with my husband. I have two cats, which I absolutely adore and love.
Oh,
I'm obsessed with my cats. So if you're following me on Instagram, you're probably seeing a lot of like cats on my Instagram story. Um,
me
but
too.
yeah, oh my gosh, I'm obsessed. I love them so much. But
Yeah.
um so I started my yoga journey about 8 years ago, and I just went purely for the asana portion. I knew yoga was good. Like everyone knows yoga is good for you. I knew it was like physically good for me, but I didn't realize how mentally helpful it was until like my later studies. So 8 years I practiced yoga. I like watched videos initially, and then I started practicing in the studio. And then I got my 200-hour teacher training, which was about 2017. I can't even, I feel like with this pandemic, I'm losing
Oh,
track of, so
I
that's like a lot
know.
more years. Where like 2017 is when I got my my 200 hours. So
Yeah.
do the math. I can't do math right now, but and
Uh,
that was
5 years ago.
5 years ago. Okay,
There we
so that
go.
was, thank you. That was like totally different from me taking classes. Now, with my 200 hour, I learned like the foundation, very, very basic.
Mm.
Um, I learned about what yoga was. I learned about, a little bit of the asana. And my 200 hour was a very, very, very watered down version of yoga. Now, if you've seen yoga, you probably see people doing handstands more physical than what it really is.
Yes.
So the pandemic hit, and my yoga studio, I was teaching online, and then they wanted to start doing it in person, which I did not feel comfortable with. So I kind of left the studio, and that's when I did my 300-hour teacher training. Was so transformational for me because
Oh,
I learned all the different aspects of yoga. Well, not like all of it, but
yeah.
very different from my 200-hour. More of the mental, spiritual. Um, I learned the different kinds. I learned about yin yoga,
Oh,
restorative, how to teach people with who like trauma informed, like teaching a very trauma informed class, which I think every yoga class should be trauma informed, just because when students are coming into your classroom, you don't know what they've been through.
yes.
Um, so I've learned so many different ways. And through my 300-hour, I learned about yoga therapy, which I had no clue about.
Mm.
And now yoga therapy is like it's getting more popular. I think it's on the cusp. But it's been around for like years, but not
All
many people
right.
know about it. So as a yoga therapist, it's different from a yoga teacher because a yoga teacher, they don't learn like the medical side of yoga. They don't learn like the spiritual, the science behind what yoga is. In my yoga therapy training, we're getting training with people who are um, their niche, like they're specialized in anxiety or depression, anatomy, grief. So these people who are training me have they're like very knowledgeable about anxiety and depression, but then they're also yoga therapists, so they learn the science behind the yoga and the philosophy and how they can like marry the two together, which is such a great, I think it's a great therapy, and
Yes. Yeah.
we talked about this, how you even like tell your clients to do yoga because there's so
Yeah.
many benefits, but there's so much more to like just the asana portion. And for me, I'm trying to get the word out of how it can help mentally, and not only with like very simple things like, okay, I'm stressed, but anxiety, depression, grief, even chronic pain. There's so many ways yoga can help. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's my yoga story.
Yes. And that's why I send my clients to yoga, because it's not only physical, and people don't, feel the depth of their grief.
Yeah.
Just, if you just went to a yoga class where it's handstands and all that sort of stuff,
Yeah.
and that sort of stuff comes up, the emotional stuff around grief and loss, and how does a teacher deal with that then?
Yeah. And that's the thing when it comes to a yoga class, when there's maybe like 20 to 25 people, some
Yeah,
people may not even like say anything to you. They
yeah,
may just leave the class, but then somehow they feel triggered, and sometimes people don't realize that they're triggered. People say going to yoga class you're supposed to feel good, but if you go to yoga class where the teacher is not trauma informed, or they're not teaching properly, because sometimes in yoga you get in very vulnerable positions,
yeah,
and as a teacher you need to know how to use the language to get the students in those vulnerable positions. And also sometimes teachers will be like hands-on assisting, and they need to realize when a student is being triggered and
yes,
when to back off, and just to realize that. And that's just, there's so many yoga teachers out there, but in the training, I don't think in all the trainings it's required to be trauma informed. And that's like a big proponent, I think, that we need to, as people in yoga, they need to realize that not
yeah,
everyone's going to come to their class with stuff like, even if it's something as small as like having a bad day, just maybe
yeah,
work was bad, and maybe the teacher says something that triggers you. And so for me, I think I also want to educate people of like where to find a good studio, who are good teachers to find, because a lot of times people like yoga teachers, from what I've experienced, people may have not experienced this, but a lot of times as a yoga teacher, you're taught to be on in this room, but then they're not taught trauma informed things. You're not taught the trauma informed cues of how a student may become trauma, like
yeah.
going through trauma. You're taught to like talk loudly. You're taught to
Oh, wow.
command, command a room.
Yeah,
I understand it's important, but sometimes things like that, it's not good for a class as a whole.
no. Wow.
So
I'm
it's
so glad I have my yoga teacher, because she's so intuitive and she's so spiritual as well. Like, she learnt in India, and she just knows how to connect with the room.
That's the most important thing. And I think a lot of times in studios, you're taught to be like, all right, well, for me, for personally, my 200 hour we're taught a set sequence. And the
Yeah.
set sequence, we had to say certain cues. And
Right.
at the time, I was like, okay, that's fine. But those cues are not even atomically correct, you know?
Wow.
So, and like, I'm not, sometimes that works for people, but when we're talking about grief and trauma, and if you really want to make a difference with your students, you really need to look at your students and
Yeah.
listen. And you can listen by just looking. Sometimes if you're going too fast in a class, you need to slow that down.
Yeah.
If you're noticing your students are not breathing, you need to stop and be like, all right, we're going to just stop for a second, and we're going to breathe, and just like constantly say, okay, breathe, breathe, breathe. And that's something that
Yeah.
I've learned throughout my teaching, is really watching my students, paying attention, and not being in my head, because I think as a yoga teacher, you kind of get nervous because you're in front of all these students, and you're like, okay, well, I want to teach them a good class. And that's how I was initially. I'm like, I want to teach them a really good class. And then as
Yeah.
time went on, and I got to know the regulars that would come to my class, they would tell me what was going on, and I could see how that was in their body. They were either in their head, they weren't breathing. And so instead of like calling out people and being like, hey, April, you need to start breathing,
Oh,
which I've
it's-
seen in class. I
oh,
would never do that. I would never do it.
no.
But
Oh my gosh, that's so shaming.
And that's the thing. That's what people think. And like you have to call
Yeah.
people out in class, but no. And you know what? I would say, okay, I see that person is not breathing. I'm gonna just mention it, like, hey guys, focus on your
Yeah.
breath. Take a deep breath in as
Yeah.
you know get into chair pose. As you get
Yeah.
out of chair pose, take a deep breath out, and like really reminding them to focus on their breath. Because the first time you say they're not gonna listen,
No.
which is in their head. The second time you say they're not gonna listen, the third time, and like you could say it 10 times and they still can't listen,
Yeah.
but that's okay. And you know, with my teachings, I've learned that really paying attention to the students, and even if you say something and they don't listen. I don't want to say they don't listen, but they're
Yeah.
not like, oh, she's talking about breathing, and they're like, okay, let me change my breath.
Yeah.
That's okay, because I've mentioned to them, and then the next time if they're having a hard time breathing, I want to say, hey guys, let's remember to breathe, and
Yeah.
I'll cue through the breathing. So I think that being said, like yoga is so much more complicated than calling out, the
Yeah.
pose,
Definitely.
making it fun, and that's what a lot
Yeah.
of people focus on. They're just calling out poses, making it
Oh
fun.
no.
But in reality, there's so much to it.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Because I found, like, when I first started years and years ago with a different teacher who was as equally as magnificent as my teacher now, I used to so concentrate on the posing that
Yeah.
he would just come over and just, um, talk about breath work and things like
Yeah.
that, and where you should be breathing. Yeah. And it's
100%.
like, oh, okay, breathing as well as moving.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I
and
think,
that's a big part of yoga, like
yeah,
noticing your breath. So my a lot of people ask me what the goal of yoga is, and I think it depends on each person, but the main thing is like listening to your body and
yes,
then connecting your breath to your body. So
yeah, yeah,
as you're going through your flow, um, connecting your breath to your body, breathing when you need to, breathing out when you need to. And a lot of times, when it comes to cueing breath, it's a little hard because not everyone needs to like breathe out when they're doing a certain pose. Not everyone
mm,
needs to breathe in. It depends on the person. And like we mentioned before, it depends on what the person is going through.
yeah,
Sometimes people are like shallow breathers and they need that really, really deep breath. Sometimes people are fast breathers and they need to slow it down.
yeah,
So it's hard to cue breathing, but it's good to be like, hey guys, remember the breath,
yeah,
focus on your body. What do you need? And I think it's a great time where teachers can be like, okay, let's play around with our breath. Let's see what works for you.
yeah,
Is what you're doing, if you're a fast breather, is what you're doing helping? Or do you need to slow
mm,
that down? And I kind of in my when I was teaching
yeah,
back before pre-pandemic,
yes,
I kind of like play around with it because sometimes you'll change your breath and you'll have like an aha moment where holy crap, this actually works for me. So
yeah,
I really want to teach my students that there's so much to yoga and you don't have to do it the same way, and there are different ways to do it. So
yeah, 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 yeah. There are. And
mhm.
also, like, do you have different classes? Like, do you have breath classes and yeah, all the different,
Yeah. So, so you're talking about me personally?
yeah,
So personally, I'm doing one-on-one sessions. So it depends on what that person wants. So if that person is looking for, let's say they're anxious and they want something to help them with their anxiety, uh, it's very different from a yoga class that I would teach because it's one-on-one. We see what their imbalances are. So it may be that they're staying up late at night, and so maybe they need something to help them sleep. So I
yes,
I would suggest yoga nidra, which is a great
yeah,
thing to do right before sleep. Um, or I would even suggest maybe meditation or even like restorative poses on the bed.
yeah,
So for me, I do one-on-one sessions now. Since I'm still in the pandemic here in Florida, I haven't really done group sessions in a long
yeah,
time. I've done more of like Zoom one-on-ones, and
mm,
it's been very interesting. And also with the yoga therapy sessions, the one-on-ones, we try things out. So for example, I'm like, hey, let's try yoga nidra. Let's do about 30 minutes of yoga nidra before you go to bed. That
yeah,
might not work for that person.
yeah,
They can try it for like 4 to 5 weeks and they come back, they're like, okay, I don't know if this is working. So I move on to something else.
yes,
And, I think that there's so many different aspects of yoga that I think anything, you can find something, but it's not going to be the same for the person who's like sitting next to you in the yoga studio.
Yeah.
And that's what I find so fascinating.
Yes, yeah, because we're all different, aren't we? And
Mhm.
when I think even like, because I work mostly with grief, I have like clients who have anxiety and depression as
Yeah.
well, but mainly grief. And grief is just so different in every
And
single person.
yeah, it is. And you know what's so interesting? So I'll just say a little bit about my grief story. So in 2020, I lost my grandma end of July in India. So we couldn't go see her in India. She
Yeah.
was sick for some time, but we just didn't know when she was going to pass. So that was like a shock to me because
Wow.
for like a whole 2 years, mom's like, oh, she's really sick. She's really sick. And I'm like, oh, I'll just talk to her later. I'll just talk to her later. And
Oh,
I never
yeah.
got to talk to her. So,
Yeah.
and then the one very triggering thing for me was in December of 2020 is I had a pregnancy loss, which was one of
Mm.
the most devastating things ever. I was 14 weeks pregnant. So,
Oh.
that's when you supposedly cross the safe.
Yes.
You're like, okay, I'm safe.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and my husband and I were trying for so long. So this was like a
Oh,
miracle for
yeah.
us. And it was so sudden. It was very sudden. I know I kind of know why that happened, but at that time I'm like, what is wrong with me? And then throughout whole of 2021 was like so weird to me. It's like I felt like I lost myself.
Yeah.
I and with grief, when it comes to other people, I think people are a little nervous of like what to say.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of the people who I thought were like my ride or die, like kind of just
Yeah.
stopped talking to me. I found out who my true friends are. I went through a lot of sleepless nights, which before this, the loss, I was an amazing sleeper.
Yeah.
Like I could sleep anywhere, and now I have trouble sleeping.
Yeah.
And then in August, so as the holidays came about, I was like anticipating, oh, this is when I was pregnant. And so I
Yeah.
started, I thought I had an earache. I ended up finding out I have TMJ, which is
Oh, me
horrible.
too.
Yeah. And you know what? I didn't realize it. I have like ringing in my ear too. So I like grind my teeth at night.
Yeah.
That I went to someone and they're like, oh, you're grinding your teeth at night, which is probably causing your ears to ring.
Yeah.
And so one big thing of that is my meditation practice kind of linked. Like I had a hard time meditating because I would hear this ringing noise. I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I just want to hear quiet. I love quiet.
Yeah.
So it's like grief doesn't just change you with the person you've lost, or when
Mm-mm.
we're talking about secondary grief, like maybe it's a job or something else, it changes your life completely. And it's
Yeah.
like all these little things I didn't realize. Like sometimes I used to be such a like chill person. Sometimes I get pretty anxious,
Mm.
like of losing a person, where I'll be like, oh my God, that person's out driving. I hope everything's okay. And it's like
Yeah.
I didn't think of that before, like my loss.
No.
And
Yeah.
so it's interesting, and the yoga techniques have helped me. I journal a lot.
Oh, great.
I
Yeah.
do gratitude. um and there's very simple principles in yoga which people probably do every day and don't realize it. Like going
Yeah.
for a walk is part of the yogic lifestyle.
Yeah.
um Eating certain foods. So there's something called Ayurveda, and in Ayurveda there's the six tastes. So I know like three out of the six tastes. It's
Yeah.
like bitter,
Ah,
sweet,
sweet.
and there's
Yeah.
I don't know the text.
Umami. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
so those in certain instances, those are supposed to help you if you're anxious
Yeah.
or you feel like a little jittery, which is so interesting. And
Yeah.
Ayurveda is the sister science of yoga. So yoga and Ayurveda go together.
Right.
But there's little simple things, or even something as simple as finding joy in your life. For example, my husband and I, we like transformed our backyard. So we built like a little pollinator garden. We wanted to
Oh,
attract little hummingbirds and like butterflies,
yeah.
just trying to find the little things that make you happy or bring you
Yeah.
joy, because
Yeah.
that's important in grief. So I think this whole like
Yeah.
was the weirdest year for me, but I've learned so much.
Yeah.
And yeah, yoga can definitely help in so many
Yeah.
different ways, like I said.
Yeah. Because people don't realize that grief impacts you physically and mentally.
Yeah.
So it's not only like your immune system is most weakest when you have the shock
Mhm.
of grief.
Yeah.
So, it's like it's people, it's just grief is so all encompassing of your life, really. And people are trying to get over it rather
Which is,
than,
yeah, and you know what? When I first went through my pregnancy loss, this is before like I really researched grief and I've read a
yeah.
couple of grief books. I was like, all right, 3 months. My grief is
I
gonna
know,
go.
magic.
And I was like, why am I still feeling like this after 3 months? And I realized it's like a lifetime. It's gonna be a lifetime feeling. And a
Yeah.
lot, I think now what I've realized talking to people is people don't want to feel uncomfortable. They
Uh-huh.
don't realize, and when people feel uncomfortable, they try to do things to like mask their feelings. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about like bringing joy into your life to like mask the grief. You know,
Yeah.
when we're feeling our feelings, like when you want to cry, cry. When you're angry, angry. Like these are all normal emotions, and we can't just push them down because then,
Yeah.
you know, that could really hurt our body. Like holding on to things that make us angry and mad and not releasing,
Yeah.
that can really affect our energy, honestly.
Oh, exactly. Yes. Yeah. Oh, wow. You this is why yoga is so important, because it's all energetic as well, isn't it? It's to do with your energy and your physicalness, your mental state, your spiritual state as well.
It's all
So
connected. It's all
yeah, yeah,
connected.
yeah.
Physically you could look quote
Oh,
unquote healthy, but
yeah,
mentally you may have some turmoil. Like,
yeah,
spiritually you could be fine, but then mentally you like it all connects. And I think
yeah.
I think right now people are understanding that mental health is so important. I think the pandemic kind of opened up that whole
Sure.
aspect of mental health.
Mm.
Um, but I think we could still work on that, honestly.
Yeah, yeah,
I think baby
yeah, yeah,
steps.
yeah. And as you said before, yoga is a way of life as
It is a
well.
way of life. It is.
Yeah,
And it's like, it's literally, so in yoga, we have something called ahimsa, which is peacefulness. So
mm.
you're doing things that bring you peace. Like, for example, I don't watch the news because I don't want to listen about COVID. I don't want to hear politics. I'm in America and that's all we talk about on the news.
I know. Same here.
And so, like, and even if I'm scrolling, if I see something and I'm like, I try not to mindlessly scroll, but
Yeah.
sometimes it does happen. If I'm
Hmm.
scrolling and I see something that doesn't like, that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is really offensive.
Yeah.
I just like either unfollow that page or unfollow that person.
Yeah.
Um, because right now I think it's important, especially when you're going through grief, to really protect yourself.
Yes.
Protect yourself not only from like social media, like after I went through a pregnancy loss, I unfollowed like people who were pregnant or who
Yeah.
were going through that, because for me that was
Yeah.
triggering. I looked at my friends list. I'm like, okay, who has talked to me after 4 months? Who's actually made an effort?
Wow.
And there's nothing against those people. Friendships come and go, but
Yeah.
I think grief really accelerates your friendship lifespan. And
Yeah.
that's yogic. You're protecting your peace. That's part of yoga. So
Yeah. That's right. Exactly.
mhm.
Wow. Therapy and yoga go hand in hand. They really do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because and that's just self-care,
Hmm.
because people don't understand how grief works, because after 3 months or after the funeral, it's meant to be done.
Yeah.
They don't realize it's the rest of your life.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting? You say after the funeral, it's not done.
Mm.
I'm following someone on Instagram who lost a very, very dear person to them.
Yeah.
And, it was very like I just really felt for her because she was like, holy crap, I just feel
Yeah.
weird after the funeral. And I'm like, wow, I haven't been in her shoes, but to lose someone so dear, and you're like
Yeah.
planning your life in 2022 with this person, planning
Yeah.
all these events, and all of a sudden they're gone, that's like, you don't think of it that way. You think, all right, after 3 months, it's
Yeah.
done. That's
Done.
not how it
Yeah,
is.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. And because when somebody dies, especially a partner or a child or, a pregnancy loss, that's their whole future that you would
Yeah,
have had with them that you've
exactly.
lost. It's
And I
not
don't
just them.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think with my pregnancy loss, I was like, wow, I'm never gonna know we found out we were going to have a son like
Yeah.
a few days after. I never know how, or a few days
Oh,
before. So I
yeah.
never know how my son's going to be. Is he going to like be like his dad? Is he going to be into
Yeah.
sports? Is he going to
Yeah.
be like, it's like you're not just mourning the child, you're mourning the future.
Yeah.
You're mourning all these like milestones you're going to have, like when the date hit of my pregnancy loss, which was December 17th, it
Yeah.
was such a weird day for me because I'm like, holy crap, this is the day that I lost my child. It was like the worst night of my life.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure how I was going to feel. I think I was like a little nervous, but it seemed like a regular day. But in the back of my head, I'm like, wow, this happened a year ago. It was
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
very
That's right.
interesting to kind of
Yeah.
feel that. So,
Yeah. 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 And it's I don't know. I don't like to say glad it happened, that you remembered that date. It's
yeah.
like, I don't know what the word is. It's not glad. It's good that you remembered that date. Like I
Yeah.
remember my dates of my baby loss as well, my
Mhm.
pregnancy loss. So,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah,
And I think it's good to remember because if you're gonna, initially when we had our pregnancy loss, my husband was like, I don't want to remember anything. I want to throw everything
yeah,
away. But we
yeah.
actually have a little box of his stuff. Just
Oh,
to remember,
lovely.
I think it's good to remember. Even the hard times, like even though he's not here with us, like,
Yeah,
he brought so much joy to us. And like,
yeah,
you know, our next child, we're not gonna like forget him, we're just gonna be like, this is
yeah,
like it brought our relationship stronger too, which is good, a lot of open
yeah,
communication. So it was very interesting, and it
yeah,
was a very weird experience, like with
yes, yeah.
after the grief, and then holy crap, I thought I passed the threshold of the safe zone, and I'm not. So it's
No,
really
that's right. And that happens so often, that, yeah, and there is 1 in 4 miscarriages.
1 in 4,
One,
which is actually like a
that's,
lot. That's
yeah,
very,
it is
very
a lot.
common.
It's massive,
Yeah.
really. Yeah. So, yeah. And we're not told that. Like, I lost my first baby through pregnancy loss as well. So, and people don't talk about that because,
Oh,
oh, you're only pregnant. You can get pregnant now. That's what I
yeah.
got. Like,
But
yeah.
that's the worst thing when they're like, you'll just get pregnant again. I'm like, but
Oh,
I wanted this baby.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
so my husband and I, it took us like 2 to 3 years to get pregnant. So it was
Yeah.
like, it's not just like, oh, it's easy.
No, that's right.
So yeah.
Exactly.
And then
Yeah.
after that, and after you're pregnant, I'm sure it's like anxiety and
Yeah.
stress. Holy
Yeah.
crap, I'm gonna lose this baby again.
Yeah,
You
that's right.
know, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's really difficult, to go on and have another baby and then get past that, the
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
even. It's really, it's nerve-wracking. It really is. And yeah, but yeah, well, Namrata, we have to finish there. And I would love to have you
Oh,
back again if that's okay.
yeah, I would love to come back, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah, because you're just so interesting. And people can find you on Facebook and Instagram. And
So, yes,
yeah,
on Instagram, it's Tranquil Lotus Yoga.
yeah,
And then on Facebook, it's the same thing, Tranquil Lotus Yoga.
right. And then your website as well.
My website is tranquillotusyoga.com. So everything's very simple.
Right. Excellent. All right. So I'll put that in the bit down below, the description down below, and
Awesome.
hopefully people will connect with you because
I would
it
love
just,
that. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm doing one-on-one sessions. So if you need help with
fabulous.
anxiety, depression, grief, just
Yeah.
contact me.
Yeah.
The website, Instagram, wherever you can find me. So
Yeah, yeah. Fantastic. It's just been so great talking to you. I could talk to you all morning or your night.
yeah, I know.
All right. Thanks so much.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.